Welcome everyone to the third annual Love Local Meet Your Farmers and Makers virtual event. We are just so delighted to have you all here. My name is France Hahn. I'm a co-founder and co-executive director here at the Kearsarge Food Hub. This is my colleague,
Hannah Flanders, also a co-founder, she, her pronouns, and I am our director of marketing and communications here for KFH. We have a whole team of people really helping hold it down for us tonight here at our Love Local event. So we have Tara Mahady. Hi, Tara. She's our Sweet Beet marketing manager and oh, so much more. She is managing the chat. And if you have any technical difficulties or need help with anything on that side of things tonight, you can feel free to message Tara directly. We also have, and we're super, super grateful to have our featured farmers taking the time to be here with us tonight. So we have Nico and Ryan of NOK Vino. If you guys want to give a little wave.
Hi guys.
Hi guys, thanks for being here. John from Deep Meadow, and John, is Kyle here? Have I seen Kyle?
I haven't seen him yet. I will try to rise him again.
Well, either way, there's John from Deep Meadow over in Ascutney. We have Greg here from Spring Ledge Farm. Where's Greg? Hi, Greg. Greg just got back from a greenhouse workshop in Manchester, right? Hustled back to join us tonight. So that's very nice of you.
Greenhouse conference, yep.
Yeah. And then we have Pierre from Sweet Beet Farm. We also have Julie and Jake, some of our other team members here tuning in. So if y'all want to wave, Cassie too from our Sweet Beet team tuning in. Hey, everybody. And then all of you guys who are taking the time to join us tonight, we would love to know who's tuning in. I mean, we've kind of run through in large part the list here tonight, but pop in the chat who you are, where you're tuning in from. If you want to add in your pronouns or a land acknowledgement from where you're tuning in from. And as we always request, we would really like to know what you're eating tonight. So if you can let us know in the chat what you're eating tonight. Alternative question from the outset is, what's your favorite vegetable? And not to make it more confusing, but what's your favorite way to eat a potato is also an acceptable addition to the chat. Before we begin, really into the meat of what or the juice, or lots of vegetarians here, so we'll keep it juicy, but we have to acknowledge the land that we are on in Bradford and in our Kearsarge region. It is the unceded land of Endakina, which has long served as a site of meeting for Abenaki people from Contoocook, Newberry, and beyond for thousands of years. The town of Bradford and the Kearsarge region honors, recognizes, and respects these Abenaki as the traditional stewards of the lands and waters on which we virtually gather today. In that spirit, we wanted to be sure to begin this evening by acknowledging that we are guests in this land, and we commit to respecting and helping to protect the lands within our use and share the bounties with our Abenaki partners today. And so we are gathering here in this very modern 2023 way via Zoom for the Love Local event. And I just wanted to give you an overview of what to expect this evening as we move through this hour and a half that we have to spend together. We're going to have a little introduction here to set the stage of who we are here at the Kearsarge Food Hub and what our work is all about, and what the food system, the state of our current local and regional food system. And then we're going to dive into the videos that we've been working hard to craft for you guys on site at our featured farms. As mentioned, we have NOK Vino, Deep Meadow Farm, Spring Ledge Farm, and Sweet Beet Farm. And we have videos made on site really so that we can see what their work is all about, where they're working and doing the work. And those videos are about 5 to 6 minutes long. France and I will guide you through them, and that will lead us to the discussion portion of the night, which will be about 30 minutes at the end of the evening. We're going to have a chance to ask questions of our farmers, which you are welcome to put your thoughts in the chat throughout the evening that you have for our farmers as we move along. And we also have some questions for you all that we're going to get to in just a couple minutes. So that's what you can expect tonight. And again, any technical difficulties, any questions, the chat is there for your use.
All right, everyone, to set the stage a little bit, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about who we are at the Food Hub and what we're here to do tonight. Hannah and I, along with our co-founders, founded KFH almost 10 years ago. Yeah, we've grown a little bit. We started as a small roadside stand, and we've grown into a full-fledged nonprofit organization. We're a hub holding together a network of services that range from growing food with regenerative practices on Sweet Beet Farm, which you'll learn a bunch about later on. To Sweet Beet Market and Cafe, creating food access all year long. I see many shoppers here tonight. Thank you for being here. And of course, to making sure that our neighbors also have access to the fruits of our land. And we do that through a food donation program, like our very own fridge that is on the porch of Sweet Beet Market and Cafe. And so we've grown from 6 founders to a robust organization. We have a team of over 20, and our services that we provide are critical and essential for our community. Our food donations, for example, reach over 500 families every single month. And last year we sent over $350,000 back to our local farmers.
Yeah. Thank you, Franz. That's really, here at the Hub, we aim to make a real difference in the lives of our neighbors right here in our community. And we're also working to be a part of systemic change in the ways that we grow, eat, and share local food, and also in the regional food system. And so systemic change, why is that needed? What is that all about? And to kind of set the stage of where we currently are in our local food system and regional food system, New England produces about 12% of the foods that we consume, and about 5% of our lands are in agricultural use. At the same time, many farmers, and this is a theme that's going to come up for us tonight, struggle to find access to land for farming. We have a benchmark set forth by regional partners at Food Solutions New England, the UNH Sustainability Institute, and others to supply 30% of the foods that we need here in the New England region from local sources by 2030. So that's
Yes.
A pretty big jump from 12 to 30%.
It is. This benchmark is about greater food security for this region. And of course, food security for all of us is farmer security. I think we all remember when shelves at the grocery store were empty during COVID, and the shock and the wake-up call that was for all of us on the importance of a localized supply chain, where global disruptions that we have no control over are less likely to impact our ability to access the foods that we need. Of course, another imminent threat to food security is climate change. And we'll be digging into that quite a bit tonight. We all experienced the extreme weather this summer here in New Hampshire, the heavy rains, the cold days. And however, surely no one has felt those impacts more than our farmers. Farmers are the front lines experiencing the effects of climate change in their businesses, which of course rely on and interact with the natural systems. And so as we'll learn tonight, how we farm and steward the land through agriculture has the potential to mitigate and potentially even reverse climate change impacts.
Potential. That's kind of the key word here tonight. I thank Nico for bringing that word up when we were filming at the vineyard. Potential is what tonight is all about. It's about, how can we, through this conversation, through sharing the space tonight, find more potential in our local food system to build more resilient and connected communities in the face of these really real challenges like climate change, like land access for farmers. As mentioned, we're very grateful to have our farmers here with us tonight, sharing their time, sharing their stories, their experiences, so that we can learn from them and with them about, what we can all do to contribute to a more robust local food system. It's not just up to the farmers we have to activate this potential in our food system. It comes down to all of us and the individual choices that we make and the way that we create and co-create our communities. So keeping all of this in mind, we're working together to inch a little bit closer to that 30% of food supplied by our local farmers in New England by 2030. And this is a really important part of that, coming together for these kinds of conversations. It really does make a difference. I learned a lot that I didn't know in helping to create this evening, and I know we all will together as well. So before we dig into the videos, these are the questions we want you to have in mind. Tara's going to pop them into the chat for you so that you can have them there as well. As mentioned, what does it mean to preserve a local rural landscape and support a rural revival? And why should we do it? What are we or you currently doing, or what will you do that you weren't doing before, maybe that you felt inspired by from this evening to help create a more robust food system? And I think this one is really, really interesting because human behavior is very, very interesting. But how do we help create lasting change to participate in the local food system? What would help to create that change in your lives? And so those are the things that we hope that you'll be thinking about. And we're going to circle back to that during the discussion portion of this evening. But we're going to start with our videos. And we're starting with NOK Vino. I had the privilege of sitting down with Nico and Ryan in their kind of home base in Concord to learn more about NOK Vino. It's a new business that started in 2022, really on the front lines of a sector of biodynamic winemaking and grape farming. And this is something that doesn't really exist otherwise in the New Hampshire food system. It's something that they're really trying to bring to the table, where vineyards across the state have gone in disrepair and are in real need of people like Nico and Ryan to come and farm the fruits and make use of them through fermentation processes that really highlight the grape itself and the taste of New Hampshire. So Nico and Ryan are going to say it much better than I will. So we're going to watch our first video. Bear with me while I share my screen with you.
I found this on the web.
Oh, no. I don't need you. Thank you, though. Okay, here we go.
I'm Nicholas Kimberly, also known as Nico. I am a grape farmer and wine crafter for NOK Vino, the company that we started last year here in New Hampshire. We farm grapevines throughout the state on 5 or 6 different vineyards. We do all that farming ourselves using organic or beyond organic techniques.
My name is Ryan. I've been doing this with Nico since 2021, farming organically, fermenting naturally. There's not many places in this state specifically that works along the types of philosophy that we do to make wine. What the whole kind of meaning behind NOK is not otherwise known.
One of our goals is rural revival. And that doesn't mean it's all agriculture. It just means that rural culture needs bolstering, it needs the connections, and agriculture is a great tool for that. You know, agriculture connects people across generations. You know, Ryan and I have been on our own journey here of taking what we've learned from lots of different places and sort of integrating it into what works for us in the vineyards we have.
We're able to make so many different kinds of beautiful ferments from beautiful fruit that grows in this state.
When we talk about quality of wine in this state, our goal is to bring the most authentic, direct expression of grapes here. So we're learning this together with people, and that's part of the community aspect.
As much as our mission is to grow grapes and preserve agricultural rural landscapes, make something that's delicious that inspires people, what we're interested in is creating culture around the vine, viticulture. And when it comes to alcohol, culture puts a limit on alcohol consumption, or in an ideal culture it should, to say, yes, this is something to open with your friends and enjoy, but also it's not something that can be abused, and you need a community to remind you of that sometimes, so that people aren't falling into addiction, people are feeling connected to others.
The best way that time and energy can be spent is when it's savored and enjoyed. Once we are able to grow enough together, can we thrive in those spaces where that balance exists.
This year we had a late freeze event on May 18th. We saw a pretty devastating loss of the buds that had emerged. In this vineyard that we're sitting at, we had a 95% loss. which means we harvested 5% of what we harvested last year from this vineyard, which is challenging from a lot of aspects. Certainly challenging from the financial aspect and, you know, the creation of wine. We're going to make very little wine this year. Also a challenging thing to see and experience mentally. Going to a vineyard where the day before everything is green and in the, you know, spring sunlight, and literally the next day the whole vineyard is brown and everything's crumpled and withered. I mean, I cried. I screamed and I cried. Seeing this devastation initially was hard, but as the years gone on, all the way up until now when we've harvested, it's like, wow, we really have this little amount of grapes. And then we also had a challenging season from the amount of rain we've had. It makes it challenging to grow grapevines organically. We had a ton of mildew pressure this year, so we've had to do more work cultivating the vines, spraying them, but also just handwork removing diseased leaves, which is our main method of disease removal. That's given us a challenge of the freeze, the rain events we've had ongoing, and then just our own ability to cope with all of those stressors.
You know, we learned quickly what can survive years like this.
We now know which vineyard sites survive a late freeze, and we know which varieties can tolerate extremely heavy rain. I find gratitude in this year for those learnings, and I find hope in knowing that what we've learned is very, very important for the future of what we want to do. And you know, we've had less grapes this year, but we've seen an abundance of apples come our way. People in the community have reached out. Everyone's giving us apples, dropping off a few crates here or there, all the way up to someone being like, I've got a 10-acre orchard, you can have all the apples for free. To really make an impact in local food and your community, be curious. Try to source as many things as you can from places that are closest to you. You can participate in a community by sourcing 20, 30, 50, I don't know, 70% of the things you need to survive from the people around you. You know, we start getting to these layers of local that they're human, they're personal. They're like, oh, you know that place, so do I. Here, have some cider that we picked the apples we made, right?
Holding space to show that you're interested in the places that you inhabit will perhaps be the most effective way of encouraging growth. Staying and letting the heart beat.
We're just getting started as a business. We're selling our wine in Sweet Beet Market and Warner Public Market, farmers markets in the summertime, but we're working on figuring out how to get more wine for the people out there in the world. You can find us online at our website, NOKVino.com. There's so much potential that is all around us, and I think it's up to all of us to awaken that within ourselves and discover it in other places other than ourselves. I mean, that's a human experience. I think we advocate strongly for that.
You're starting to see the return to quality of craft on a large scale. It's really beautiful. What we're able to represent here is so big for viticulture of an entire region. Might be the best thing you ever have.
Wow, the care and enthusiasm for what you do, Nico and Ryan, truly, truly shines through.
Yeah, inspiration for sure.
I'm really fascinated with this concept of the authentic expression, you know, of the grape and the apple, which I think is a representation of our soil and this place that we call home. And to me, watching this video, it feels like this invitation to open up our curiosity to what that tastes like, which means, of course, letting go of our preconceptions. And I think this is so important for all of the products of our food system. By opening ourselves up to the unique quality of the products, we have the opportunity to experience what it really tastes like to live here.
Speaking of an opportunity to taste like what it lives here, or something like that, we have a tasting happening for NOK Vino at Sweet Beet Market on November 18th, I believe, from 11 to 2. Correct, Tara and Nico? So you'll have an opportunity to come and chat with Nico. Nico, you're incredible at farmers markets, and anytime that you're sampling your wine, it's a real treat. So I definitely encourage anybody to come check that out. And Ryan, maybe you'll be there as a special treat. Who knows? Cool. And again, questions for these farmers in the chat, and we'll get to the discussion later so we can hear a little bit more from Nico and Ryan a little bit later. But for now, we're going to move up to the Connecticut River Valley to Ascutney, Vermont, which is the home of Deep Meadow Farm. Deep Meadow Farm is a large farm in terms of many of the farmers we work with at Sweet Beet. 50 acres of organic vegetable production. Seems like a large farm given the context of our hyper-local food system, but really, you know, in the industrial national food system, the average size of the farm is about 445 acres. So we're still working with pretty small farms here in our region, and yet Kyle and John and their crew produce, John, I think you said maybe nearly 1 million pounds of food, something like that. So it's a really important part of the local food system. And so let's hear a little bit more about their work over in Ascutney, Vermont. I don't know. Yes, thanks everybody. It's all in reverse.
John Cohen, Deep Meadow Farm, Ascutney, Vermont. Let's say like maybe 2007, 2008, I'm on my way from Westminster up to this area to have pigs processed at Green Mountain Smokehouse. I drive by here all the time, and they had a for sale sign. And I'm like, wow, that place is just gorgeous, you know, but I'm sure I could never afford it. In 2010, the person I'm working with through Farm Viability says to me, there's an RFP, request for proposal, for a property up in Weathersfield. Do you want to go look at it? I looked at it. They want $1 million. He says it's not quite how it works. The land trust is now involved. He said you're going to go through the process, you're going to learn, and you're going to start being involved in figuring out, you know, how to do this process. 2023, here we are. All of these different entities got involved. The Vermont Land Trust wants to support bigger endeavors. Hats off to anybody who wants to farm anything they want to farm. But we're going to have to figure out ways to turn more large-scale production models into production if we're ever going to feed ourselves. The organic model is about soil. It's about the sustainability of soil. It's about the health of the soil and health of the planet, health of the people. We now do about almost 50 acres of production. Diversified vegetables. We do a lot of greens for wholesale, quite a bit of root crops. We do about 15 acres of winter squash a year. We have storage capacity so we can carry much later into the season. You know, we shipped, I think last year we shipped on April 10th as our last ship day. We do everything from a farm stand to working with our cooperative, which is Deep Root. We do our own distribution from Hanover down to Greenfield, Mass, from Kearsarge over towards Concord to the Woodstock area. So we run a truck twice a week on peak season. And then we do 3 summer farmers markets, we do 2 winter farmers markets, we do a small CSA, we do an online ordering system, all kinds of stuff. This season, this was I mean, 30-something years of farming, I have never seen this much water ever. We lost 5 weeks of growing because of it being wet so much. We couldn't transplant, couldn't spray, couldn't cultivate. Our lower field was under, at the deepest point, probably 2 or so feet of water. Couldn't harvest, had to plow stuff under. We're operating at some point, I think, at about 40% loss. I think we've caught up a little bit on that with, you know, trying to succession plant our way out of it. We're a member of Deep Root. It's a farmer-owned co-op. There are about 24 farmer members. That's our shipping facility. They were under 7 feet of water, the whole building, everything. We lost vehicles, we lost equipment, pallet trucks. So there was a 5-day shipping window, nothing shipped. So even if we had product, we had nowhere to sell it. On and on, closed down farmers market, people not buying. So it was not only production on the farm, but all of our venues for selling stuff through were also impeded by the weather. And that was our first. I'll give you an example of where I think the problem lies, is that people go, oh, you had a flood. And the problem with that is like newsworthy. The issue is ongoing all of the time, and it's in everything that we do. This is the state of things. This is what it's going to look like. So here we are at the end of our season, you know, and kind of waiting for that first frost. We have a few more peppers to pick out of the field, and then I would say anything else left out here is just you know, late season stuff, collards and kales and cabbages, a little bit of Napa, no green cabbages here because of the flooding. You actually look at issues that are hard. It is stressful, it is painful, it is hard to do, to carry it on a regular basis. And then it becomes saturation. You know, it's like, how much of this can I listen to or talk about or, you know, or watch? And it's like, wow, okay, you know, this is enough already. So it's easier not to think about it. And we see that here on the farm. You know, how much can I keep thinking about this flooding this season? I can't. I just have to get to point B and see, are we financially viable, and stop dwelling on it and keep doing what we're doing. Are we wasting our time? I won't know until we get to that point. You know, it looks to me like we will survive this season. But here we are, succession planting of lettuce and last crops. We're gonna get one more harvest out of these fields here, and that's what we do, right? There are lots of ways for, I think, people to do something. What you eat makes a difference. And what you eat makes a difference on how the planet is going to be sustainable. That's the message. You know, it's like, what you eat matters, not just because, you know, it's organic, but what you eat because you're supporting an economy. And I think we don't spend enough time talking about the economics of all of this. Regular business, I think most farmers would say that. It's regular business that makes the difference. Buy local, buy from all of us. You know, eat more local food, find ways to, you know, learn to like more vegetables, eat in season, find ways to work with what's available.
There's a question that John poses that's been ringing in my ear. Are we wasting our time? Is it worth it? The effort, the loss, the uphill battle to do what he does, is it all worth it? And I think that question ultimately needs to be answered collectively. As we continue to imagine the future we want to create, what does that look like? Are farms and the local food system a part of that? And if so, how do we contribute to making that happen? How do we help each other be resilient?
How do we help our farmers be resilient? Because that's a lot to hold every day, day in and day out. And I know, you know, in our work, getting to know farmers, that people are tired and it's been a lot. So thank you, John, for sharing that. And again, you know, real talk, it's things are looking pretty rough in a lot of ways. And that's why we're here, to talk about it and to figure out what we can do. What we can do together. And so we'll move on. Questions for John again in the chat. We'll get to that. We're gonna move on to our next featured farm, and that is Springledge Farm. Springledge Farm, based in New London, New Hampshire, is a real community treasure. We have the honor of working with Springledge in many different ways here at the Kearsarge Food Hub, and truly, you know, in building Sweet Beet Market and Cafe as a place to not only access food, but also build community around agriculture. Springledge is a real inspiration for us because they've been doing that for many, many years. And, you know, it's really cool to see how you've been able to make agriculture kind of a household practice in all of the ways that you generously share your growing advice and ideas and tips and plants and seeding workshops and tray it forward. And what really stuck out to me in making this with you, Greg, is your generosity of spirit and sharing all that you know and all that you do at Springledge. So let's head over and hear from Greg. No. Thanks, everybody. Technology is a blessing and a curse, but it seems to be working okay. Here we go.
Yeah, my name's Greg Berger, I'm owner at Springledge Farm, which is in the heart of New London, New Hampshire. I bought the farm almost 20 years ago after working here for about 15 years before that. Started in high school, worked for the Cloughs, who started the farm. So we have a big vegetable operation as well as small fruits. In season, we'll grow everything from arugula to zucchini. The biggest crops for us are sweet corn, strawberries, tomatoes, part of our land and high tunnel area is devoted to cut flower production. In the off season, if you will, we grow greens in the high tunnels, unheated houses, so that we have some local food basically to offer to our customers. For the most part, it all goes through this little farm stand here in town. There's 4 different arrays here at the farm, one on the house, one at the farm stand, this one in the blueberry patch, and then another one in another field. It's powering all the farm, yeah. Along with being able to get fresh food here that's grown locally and within a quarter mile of where you're buying it. The community comes to Spring Ledge to come and get their plant starts for growing their own gardens. We're all about everybody learning how to grow their own food. Hopefully they'll come back and ask us questions. It's always a goal to provide more information and just to expose people to gardening, growing their own food. There goes field crew harvesting some winter storage carrots as well as fresh carrots for selling now at the farm stand. In town here, this is prime land for a town like New London or any town in this region now. It's very expensive. The previous owners, the Cloughs, they saw the writing on the wall, and in 1990 or 91 they put it under easement. It's a conservation easement, but it allows agricultural production. They worked with Osmond Sargent Land Trust, protect the scenic views. If your farmer is doing best practices and maintaining their land and caring for their land, then it helps protect the soil. It allows for there to be local food production in the future, immediate future and the distant future, because this is a conservation easement in perpetuity. We would hope that in the next 50, 100 years there'll still be a farm here producing local food. So this has been probably the most challenging year as far as weather and farming goes in my recollection here at the farm, which is over 30 years. June, July, whatever, the rains and the weather were just awful. Not to mention we had a really late freeze in later May. That took out some of the early crops that we had already put out in the field, even though we had covered them with what we thought was enough row cover. Yeah, Bruce is our berry strawberry farmer, and he was there for a good 20 hours straight. We irrigate the fields to provide frost control. By watering them during the period of cold, the water freezes on there and then it exudes just enough heat to keep it at right about 32, so the flowers don't freeze. And then just the water, it just was insane. We lost definitely 3 or 4 plantings of our weekly succession things like spinach and lettuces, and we had a whole row of peppers and eggplants and sweet potatoes that just sat in the water and drowned basically for weeks on end. We then tried to switch to figuring out how we could get things into a high tunnel, even though that wasn't the crop plan for that year. One of our mitigation ideas, I guess, is to grow more of our high value crops in a high tunnel. It's a whole new learning curve on how to grow those best there, because that at least means that we'll have a crop if the rain is similar to this year, which we imagine it will be. Either that or it'll be, it's just the extremes is really what gets the farmers, right? We've always been proponents of covering the soil as soon as we can, not wanting to see any bare soil other than what you kind of have to do to prepare a seedbed, getting it growing so that the roots there hold the soil from wind and snow and water erosion. We've got a great devoted base of customers. A lot of them understand that it's important to come in and support and purchase what we do have to offer, even if it isn't either our own that week, if it's from a local farm, or even if it isn't perfectly cosmetically looking great. The more that they come in and support us, it just helps continue that cycle. So then their dollars that come into the cash register, we reuse those to then pay our employees and pay for the cost of things and be able to plant the next season's crop. Our customers are a small percentage of the overall population that's buying food, and so trying to just entice or convince a few other people that local food is important in more ways than just what you're eating. And I think that's a big part of the next 5-10 years of figuring out how to sustain local farms and small farms like this. It's a very tight circle of where that local money just goes round and round and supports a lot of different things in the local community. Spring Ledge is happy to be a sponsor of the Sweet Beet Kearsarge Food Hub fridge. It's an open fridge so that anybody, no questions asked, can come in and get some food there. Prepared meals as well as produce. I love that idea, and that you're trusting that people who need it come in and get it, and just allow for that to happen. We sell all our stuff through our farm stand here on Main Street, 37 Main Street in London. Find us on online at springledgefarm.com. Yeah, stop in. There's lots to see here.
We're so grateful for Spring Ledge Farm, and you've been such an inspiration to us for all these years. And I think part of creating a resilient food system is making sure that more people have the opportunity to engage in it. I think people have to have a direct experience of the sense of connection and joy that being part of a food system can provide. And I really think that Spring Ledge Farm so clearly provides that for our community, and that is so incredibly invaluable. And of course, you do that by being a welcoming farm and farm stand for the community, and all of the ways that you are part of collaborative initiatives, certainly like Food Kearsarge and Trail It Forward. I hope more people can have that direct experience to really, I think, feel what we feel as well.
Yeah. Well, speaking of feel what we feel, great segue, France, into our final video, which is kind of a full circle moment. As mentioned, this is year 3 of Love Local, and we featured 5 farmers and makers last year, 5, I believe, the year before. And then this year, and now our final video, our 14th Love Local video, is our own Sweet Beet Farm here in Bradford, New Hampshire, which has really been the heart of the work at KFH in, like you said, France, and as Pierre's going to talk about in the video, providing a direct experience. And that started with ourselves. We wanted that direct experience to reclaim the knowledge and the connection to grow and enjoy our local food. And none of what we've done is possible without the inspiration and support of all of the featured farmers here and beyond in our local network. We learn so much in sharing openly kind of the knowledge and practices that we do on the farm, and the joy of reconnecting with our food in nature on the farm. And luckily, because we're a nonprofit, we're an educational farm, and we have people like Julie as our farm education coordinator, we get to share that experience with kids of all ages on the farm, all the way up through our volunteers and adults that get to come visit. So I'll pass it over to Pierre in the Sweet Beet Farm video, and then we'll reconvene. And I don't know. Jeez Louise.
So my name is Pierre. I am the Sweet Beet Farm manager, and I manage the production here on Sweet Beet Farm. We are a regenerative, certified organic farm, and we grow lots of veggies in a small space while trying to really focus on our soil health. I also help run some of our educational programs here on the farm. I work particularly with older students that are like high school level and collegiate level and beyond. Sweet Beet Farm is a program of the Kearsarge Food Hub, and we are a nonprofit organization. One of the emphasis that we have in our educational programming is to try to create models that allows our youth to have an opportunity to live this lifestyle and also make a living wage doing so, and actually stay here in New Hampshire, stay here in our local economy, and contribute to our community. I think it's important for us as an educational farm to show a model that works on a small piece of land. Unfortunately, land access is a huge issue for young farmers, for sure, and farmers in general. It makes the barrier to entry much less if you don't need as much land to produce a significant amount of food so that you can pay yourself a living wage. We produce here, we're at about 0.7 acres. In 2022, we produced around 20,000 pounds of food. We are doing this in a regenerative way. We use a lot of different soil health techniques. It's hard to put them in boxes, but because they work kind of as a whole kind of ecosystem in a certain way, because that's what we're trying to encourage, is a thriving, living ecosystem. Using minimum tillage tillage strategies, permanent raised beds. We cover our soil as much as we can. That's the balance we try to strike. How much can we yield while also making sure that we are giving back at least as much as we're taking from the soil. We started from a forest floor, and it's only been 4 or 5 seasons that we've been using these techniques, and every single year the result just keeps on growing, and the quality of the crops and the amount that we're yielding is just growing incrementally. So where's the limit to that? I'm not really sure. I'm excited to keep digging in deeper and seeing what we really can do to be able to produce in the long run, not just this year, but over the next 40, 50 years. Definitely farmers and everyone has experienced more extreme climates, which makes it more challenging for us to grow. This year was, as I experienced it as a farmer, was like a very wet and cold summer. And that slowed down crops. It created all kinds of issues, but I saw the farm adapt in a way that I was like, wow, this is definitely because of the cover cropping and the crop rotation and the permanent raised bed systems, and really encouraging that soil health that allows us to be more resilient, whether it is in an actual regenerative way or a financial way, which is we don't want people to farm and have a make or break year that gets them out of farming where they burn out or they can't keep their business going. We want to create farmers that are going to last and are going to keep doing this for a long time. I think there's a lot people can do. It reminds me of that question that we asked ourselves when we started the Food Hub, which is, how can we as individuals make a change in our lives? How can we start understanding where our food comes from and how to eat from the vegetables and from the food that is grown right here in New Hampshire? If people's curiosity carries them into wanting to learn more about the foods grown here and how to eat in a healthy, nutritious way within the restrictions of what our local economy and farmers can produce, then that's really what it's all about. It's so important for us as farmers, for everyone to have access to these vegetables, and so for sure as a food hub we have done everything we can to make sure that local food access is at the top of our priority, because everyone in our community deserves to have access to good, healthy, nutritious vegetables. Here at Sweet Beet Farm, there's a part of what we sell that goes directly to food banks and to all the different places where local food access is needed. A lot of what we produce here goes to our market, is available there year-round, and so it is available as well in our cafe, in our kitchen. I'm super grateful to be part of this local food system. The more I learn about different farmers and the more I learn about what's in and making our local economy churn, I gain a lot of respect for it and a lot of gratitude for what is here. I know we're trying to do more and trying to bring more to our community, but I think it's been an amazing discovery for me to meet all the farmers that have been doing this for a long time. This is where we can come together through that endless inspiration to bring good food to our community.
So we've heard from all our farmers that, this season was challenging, and we know that climate change is happening and is going to continue to make things challenging. So what does climate resilient farming practices actually mean? What are we talking about? Soil is the second largest carbon storing system on Earth after our oceans. We've lost 50% of our topsoil in the last 150 years, in large part because of the industrial food system. The incredible thing about organic and regenerative practices that focus on soil health is that these are real and tangible ways that we can slow climate change and even reverse it. So these practices that Pierre is talking about, like low or no-till, cover cropping, and crop rotation, are all tools of what is actually called carbon farming or carbon sequestration. And essentially, these are particularly effective at pulling CO2 out of the atmosphere and storing it in the ground. What happens is through photosynthesis, the plants draw the CO2 out of the atmosphere, and about 40% of that carbon gets deposited into the soil. That then that carbon feeds microorganisms like fungi and bacteria, and those creatures in return feed the plants and provide a natural fertilizer.
Which is pretty cool.
It's an incredible process, and there are incredible studies that are coming out saying that this is a real impactful way for us to make a difference. Our farmers are on the front line, receiving the impact of this that's happening, as well as how we can move forward in a way that might be more sustainable.
With real tangible impact. There's a lot that, was cut as we were trying to make these videos a certain length, and this evening a certain length, but so much good stuff that our farmers talked about through this process. And Pierre mentioned, the living soil and the way that it's tended on Sweet Beet Farm, like producing tangible results of how much and the quality of the vegetables that's produced. And don't even get us started about the composting project, because that's going and that's alive and well, and it's creating living ecosystems. And that just kind of zooming out to this whole night, and all of these stories kind of piece together. It's this kind of living ecosystem of farms in our local and regional network that make our food security possible, makes our food system resilient. Obviously, we've seen lots of different models represented here tonight, and I think something that I'm learning is that there's a place for all of it. It's all so important. We have Nico and Ryan out there recovering fruits from vineyards and reviving vineyards and fermenting them and trying to create a culture around the vine where people feel connected, and where we feel like our curiosity can be explored and celebrated. Over to John at Deep Meadow, where 50 acres in organic production, producing a ton of food for our regional and local food system. It didn't make the cut. Father-son operation and other father-son teams on the farm, making that all go all year round, with the storage capacity that you have, and your last shipping date being April 10th. I mean, that's huge for our local food system. And then of course we have Greg at Springledge Farm, preserving land in the heart of New London that would probably otherwise be developed in ways that don't secure our food security, as the Osmond Sargent Land Trust agreement says, that farmland can be producing in perpetuity. So there's real kind of security there, and people like Greg stewarding that land and making that possible in this web of farmers. That's what's going to help us be resilient, that diversity of models and production. So we've been pretty much perfectly on time tonight.
We have been. It's
That's
pretty
fantastic.
Incredible, and
it's not easy to do, you guys. It's not easy to do. So we're hopping into our discussion section here, and I feel like everybody is probably eager to hear from our farmers tonight. You're spending your time with us, and we have these questions that we pose to everybody that we'll get back to, we'll circle back to. But let's start by hearing a little bit more from our farmers. Any last minute questions folks have, pop in the chat. We'll start with a question that we do have for Nico and Ryan. What is the difference between organic and beyond organic farming, and what have you seen or experienced the impact of that to be on the land and on the culture that you're creating around the vine? Feel free to chime in, turn off your mute, and let's hear your voice.
Cool. Yeah. It's a great question. I think the start of the best way to answer it is organic is a set of practices. It's a standard that's recognized across the world to preserve soil health and produce food in a sustainable way. And that's a great start. Like, that is a great base for the way food should be produced. For us, we say beyond organic because we take organic as a standard and we jump off from there, and we integrate the idea of not following organic to a T, but instead sort of adapting the organic standards to the landscapes that we work in. So, for example, in viticulture, copper is a permitted antifungal spray on the vines. However, research pretty recently has shown that copper is pretty detrimental to soil health overall, especially over the long term, at the rates that it is allowed to be sprayed on vineyards, even organic rates of spray. So we've eliminated copper spray from all of our vineyards and instead worked to find different ways to manage the mildew in our vineyards that copper would otherwise be used for. And that involves learning all of the plants that grow in our vineyard and the surrounding environments. We make plant teas from those plants. So we harvest antifungal plants that grow natively, like yarrow, for example, is one that we work with. We decoct them in teas. We basically cook them down, strain them, and we add that to our sprays. And that's a way to close the loop on our farming where we're not buying outside inputs, but we're working with what grows on the land. So that's maybe like the easiest way to describe what Beyond Organic is that we're not just locked into we must farm this way, but we take that as the baseline and we jump off from there. And I don't know, I'm sure Ryan has something to add to that too.
Sure. I think with the philosophy of organic versus beyond organic, we kind of strive to not just farm a monoculture. We definitely are, as we're as interested in the whole picture of the environment of each terroir that we're working with, as well as how the vines interact with them, and trying to have as much kind of biodiversity and kind of synchronicity as possible, as far as the vines being able to interact with the plants that grow around it. We're not using any kind of herbicides or pesticides underneath the vines or on the vines in order to try to take away from the environments that exist. We're trying to work with the environments in order to kind of dial into what each of these vineyard sites can benefit the most from, instead of just trying to spray whatever kind of chemical, even if it's organic, in order to kind of put it in a rigid system of vineyard farming. We're not interested in that. We're interested in supporting the biodiversity as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you can spray it doesn't mean you need to for a particular site or that you should. Definitely.
I think that closing the loop piece is so important, for true resilience, and finding different ways that we can do that and use what's here, because a lot of what's here can be used.
Yeah, and it's here for a reason. I mean, we see in the vineyard, the antifungal plants grow in the wettest parts of the vineyard. Mm-hmm. And that's because they're adapted to survive wet conditions. And so we learn from the landscape, mm-hmm. and we read what the landscape says, and then we say, oh, okay, this is our solution to the problem that's right here in front of us.
May I add a comment?
Oh, Sachi.
Can I add a comment? Okay. This is Dr. Leon. I taught for a long time at the New England College on permaculture. And the way I have spoken with the student, the difference between organic farming, which came first, and then permaculture, which is 1970s. And the difference I say is organic is method came about to try to do the least harm to the soil by following the set of practice. And then with the permaculture, it's beyond organic, because aim, like in a recent term, regenerative agriculture, meaning make the system better. In that sense, it's beyond organic. In other words, it's okay to hold off so you don't do any more harm, to move into let's make whole system better.
Thank you so much, Sachi. That's beautiful and informative.
Informative. Yeah.
Some of the vineyards that we have seen have seen kind of change from, you know, really minimal grass underneath the vines, all the way to nowadays where it's just super lush and green. And that's from less mowing, from addition of things like beneficial like nematodes, we've done on a couple different sites, as well as in an ideal world, we would, use sheep for every single vineyard if we could, to really, those are some examples of what would make a lot of these vineyard sites better, and what have been approaches to improve these sites as well.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate that.
We do.
We
Yeah.
do. We're gonna move on to John. I believe, I don't know if Kyle's here, if he made it. But the question we'd like to throw your way is, what changes do you plan to implement for next season to navigate these challenges?
Longer vacations.
Yeah. Yes. Amazing.
Literally perfect.
Like the mic.
I just want to say a few things first, and I really appreciate listening to the other farmers. I don't get a lot of time to do that, and it's it's wonderful to hear what people are able to accomplish and what's happening out there. I think the question is mitigation, and I think it's a lot of what we're talking about often, even when we're farming. The larger we get, the more challenging it is to apply some of these techniques, such as beyond organic. And I won't get into the weeds about that, but there's we are all trying to create a higher level of biological activity in our soil, because that is the health of the soil. And then there are many ways to accomplish that, but everybody wants that. There are things we can do and there are things we can't do. I love the idea, and Greg, my hat goes off to you, but we found, with greenhouse growing, there's challenges. So even in a wet season, you have a choice. You're going to roll your sides down to keep the water out, and then you're going to create a perfect environment for disease, or you're going to roll the sides up to get great airflow and let the water in. So we had flooded, we tend to lean towards the latter, and we had flooded greenhouses this year. I've never seen so much standing water in greenhouses. So there is no, what are we going to do? The issue is significant. And that was kind of where there was a lot of nervous laughter in my interview as I listened to myself talk, because it's so beyond my control at this point. What can we do to mitigate? Well, we did things. We hired somebody with an excavator who came in and retrenched all around the edges of our fields to the best of our ability. There are probably parts of our land we will stop using after this year. But when it's dead center of a field, it makes it challenging. There was the advantage of being a diversified farm and having what we had. We found some things did better, and we found some things were complete losses. So, can we work with that? I'm not sure. We certainly, were, as I would say, is all of us, we got by. This was not a successful year. So what are we going to do differently? What are we all going to do differently? Every farmer on this call here wants to sell all of their product. They don't want to donate to a food bank. They want to sell everything that they grow. And that's what makes us viable. And we want to get, fair market value. So, we're going to continue to push local produce as much as possible, whether it's wholesale, which is kind of where our niche is in a lot of ways, and retail. And the more we can sell of what we are able to grow, will balance things out. But there isn't a whole lot we can do with, we'd rather have a drought anytime, because, You know, we can pump from the river. We can do lots of things in a drought, in a season like this. And just to give everybody, Greg mentioned a little bit in his video, but there was a flood that people talked about that occurred in Vermont on I don't remember the exact date, but it was a Monday, and it was about 4.5 inches of rain. Well, just so you're clear, that Friday there was 4.5 inches of rain again in the Windsor area. So just in a 5-day period, we saw 9 inches of rain. And this wasn't a matter of a river overflowing. We're about 30 feet off the river. This is just standing water from rain coming down. And that continued for 5 weeks. So I'm not trying to not look for pity in any way. It's what we deal with. We've been dealing with extreme weather issues on the planet. I don't think that there are any grand ideas. We cover crop like crazy, so there is a better ability of soil to absorb. I think even in one of the videos that we show, part of our video, you could see the erosion was taking out cover crop. That's how much water was coming through. So, you know, we built berms, we redirected water, we harvested what we could. But, you know, we do direct seeding of onions. We probably have about an acre of direct seeded onions a year. We watched our red onions. That's 1/4 of an acre. It's a significant amount of onions, and we got not one out of there. So why? You know, because it was never warm enough. It was never dry enough. They just never formed properly. But, you know, we had a great parsnip crop. So, you know, the trick is, can we sell all of those at the best value possible? And can that offset some of our losses? And that's diversified farming, unlike monoculture, where it's a single crop and, you know, you lose the majority of it. And the greater system, I mean, just so what are we going to do differently? We're working on a task force right now, because I think the bigger issue is going to be, is policy going to be set up in such a way that we will be able to have some sort of insurance for our losses? And does the consumer or the taxpayer recognize that there's going to need to be a pool of money set aside to help farms on this planet when we can no longer grow the way we grow, when we have seasons like we did this year? Will we see this every year? Hopefully not. Will we see it again? No doubt about it. So we're going to have to create some sort of insurance, whether it's, you know, however that's created, for farms, not like the one that's currently available through the federal government, which is impossible to work with. It does not serve diversified farms. It works very well for commodity farms. So that's the economics of all of this on the back end of it. But it's not like we're not going to dig trenches, you know, we're not going to go out there and redirect water and, you know, all that kind of stuff. This is going to be a policy thing that's going to be set up in such a way that farms set a baseline, and then they are reimbursed at a realistic value for what they do.
Thank you for that input. Super important. A couple notes before we move on. If everyone follows NOFA New Hampshire and NOFA Vermont for action alerts around policy, what John's talking about, there's also a farm bill coming up. There's a lot of talk right now about, you know, the weather is unpredictable now. So there's no doubt that an already unpredictable profession of growing food requires more insurance around what happens when there's total crop loss for our farms. And just the other thread that you mentioned, John, I think is just really important. You don't want to donate your food to food banks because you need to sell everything you produce to meet your margins. And there's razor thin margins across all farms. And I think there's an expectation that there's an abundance. We talked about this, John, on farms where you can just donate, but you as a business, you can't really afford that. And so I think third parties and nonprofit farming like we do at the Food Hub is a really important solution. That's not for every farm, but what we're able to do is actually pay farmers the price that we would, you know, to sell through other channels and direct it to food donations. And so it sounds like more of that is needed so that the foods produced are made accessible without making the cost fall on the farmer.
That's right.
Which is just
because
not
you
okay.
deserve, like you said, the fair market value of the product that you produce.
there's seconds. I mean, we always have that, and we're always going to donate anyway. But there are same thing with Salvation Farms is in Vermont is working very hard on a percentage of that crop that is reimbursed. Going back to the soil, that crop that we're donating could easily be turned back into the soil for biological activity. It doesn't have to leave that closed loop of our farm, and we do. I mean, we donate plenty. It's just that, for the economic viability of a farm, if we were actually able to recoup what we're growing, every one of these farms would be viable.
That's an important message.
Gotta increase that access and those markets. Yeah. Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
On to Greg.
Hi, Greg.
We've got a question for you.
You're not getting off.
Yeah.
Scot-free here.
Close.
So you've been farming for 30 years. Hats off to you.
Like that.
What changes have you seen in the food system in that time? And have you seen taste and interest in our food system grow, ebb, flow? What's it been like?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll just quickly chime back to what John was saying about high tunnels and water. And yes, we chose the latter to leave the sides up because otherwise everything would be mush inside from mold. And the back third, anyway, or more of each high tunnel, just because the lay of the land was flooded as well. So you're right. It's not just like, oh, I didn't mean to say that, oh, we're going to start growing in high tunnels and everything will be hunky dory, because it has different challenges, but it's one way to try and diversify, like you were saying. So yes, I guess from my perspective here and growing the crops, I mean, I guess over the years, I can't give you exact dates, but certainly vegetable farming and people growing their own vegetables and buying vegetables from Spring Ledge that has kind of done some punctuated equilibriums. It'll jump up for a couple of years and then plateau, and then 4 or 5 years later seems like it jumps up again. And certainly I think we all experienced that during the COVID years. People were interested in not only buying vegetables, but certainly growing them and learning how to grow them. And since the COVID years, we've plateaued in our business. So we saw a couple of big years of growing and more sales, and then it's evened off and kind of leveled off and down a little. As far as like different crops, I don't know if that's what you were asking, but kale was always when I was working here on the farm through high school and college, we may have grown a little bit of kale, like 20 feet of kale or something. And then that was, as we all know, it became the hot crop. And that seems to be what we're seeing is, I don't know some influencer will decide that cauliflower is
kale chips.
Kale chips, or I think, I don't know, kale seemed to go down a little bit from our perspective, but now it's coming back. But I don't know what the next one will be. That's part of the problem, is that we're diversified, and so we're planning out right now what we're going to grow in our fields next year to a certain extent. How much space we're going to allocate to XYZ crop, and kind of back to John's point that we're looking to try and be able to sell everything that we're growing at a fair market value. So all that goes into the consideration of how to keep financially the farm afloat. So if anybody knows what the next year's hot vegetable is, just put it in the chat, and we can all try and grow it. But so yeah, I guess the short answer is yes. I've seen an increased interest in vegetables, and especially in buying local. But in my experience, it seems to spike a little and then plateau for a couple of years. We're all humans. We do weird things that I don't know if anybody knows why we do them, but
lots of people dedicate their lives trying to figure that out.
Yes,
why
right.
we do as humans. And I think we're, that question that we asked at the beginning, which might be bigger than just this evening, and hopefully we'll all ponder, but what makes change last in our lives? John, you mentioned in your video, people are, there's a flood, and we're all paying attention, and then that dies down, and then our attention goes elsewhere. Oh, kale chips, this person says are great, and then that dies down, and so it's so hard to predict like what human nature will contribute to the supply and the demand that we're creating here.
Cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Parsnips,
Cost is a
sweet
big one.
potatoes are in the running. Anybody welcome to add your thoughts in the chat. What's the next hot vegetable so our farmers can be prepared for it?
Right. One other quick thing, and this goes back to Dave, like wrote in the chat a question too, and your point about what makes something stick. I think it's, from my own experience, it's just silly little stuff like flossing your teeth or whatever, right? It's just doing a little thing. I don't know what they say, maybe 4 weeks in a row or something, and then all of a sudden, so if we can get customers to stop by the farm stand or go to the farmers market consistently, then it's part of your routine, I guess. That's why in the winter we used to be closed from Christmas till Easter at the farm stand, but now we've been trying to be open on Fridays and Saturdays and to keep people in the loop. And I can't say it's been super successful, but we're going to keep trying.
Well, I think that's fascinating, and well, we're 15 minutes out from closing out tonight, but farmers and the task you have of not only growing and all the troubleshooting on the farm in production, but then you have to sell all your stuff. You have to think about the dynamics of the market and the customer experience and what makes things sell. I mean, it's just an incredible task. I think one of our goals at the Food Hub is really just to raise awareness of how intense this profession is and how much you have to hold and carry and do from the production to the sales of your food. I mean, it's, when I started learning about farming, it's something that astonished me. It's a lot.
And I think in a crude way, just marketing, and marketing power and a cohesive marketing brand. I think some of us here know, Vermont is a bit of a example. They've had top down policies, a lot of governmental support, and they have an incredible grassroots energy, and they've created a collective Vermont brand. And I really do believe that that's something that we need to do here in New Hampshire, and I think we're working on it.
I mean, everybody, tune into New Hampshire Food Alliance, NOFA New Hampshire. There are organizations, and us here at KFH in our own way, and every voice here, we are creating the brand as we go. So Sweet Beet Farm.
So Sweet Beet Farm.
Segues are, they're hard sometimes.
We have a question for you, Pierre.
We need a Bernie, says Peter Bauer. Hi, Peter, by the way. Thanks for tuning in.
Pierre, what's the benefit to you personally of having a network of local farmers to connect with, learn from, share with? ...
It's absolutely essential. It's kind of it's kind of how I'm here now. The farmers in our area are what have shaped what I do and what I've learned. I don't know if John remembers, we had a conversation in the parking lot of Sweet Beet Farm and of Sweet Beet Market rather, and we talked about finances for a couple hours and talked about just how to keep things tight and go in that, becoming financially viable. And that was a huge inspiration for me. Greg, for example, as well, has been just hugely helpful for us. He let us borrow the post pounder to make our greenhouses, which was super helpful. I visited the high tunnels at Spring Ledge 2 winters ago, and I saw them locked and loaded with greens. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And now our high tunnels are looking the same. And that's directly from the inspiration I got from Spring Ledge Farm. We are looking into growing more flowers as well. And we've talked to Allie Howe at Spring Ledge Farm as well. And so what we do is so directly linked to the inspiration I've got from the farmers that are here tonight and also just in our area. So I think having a network of farmers is what will make us strong through that collaboration. And I think there's a great need for more organization between farmers to create more supply in some ways, especially for the smaller farms. If we can come together, then maybe we can start also supplying more food to some really important spaces on our community. For me, the top 2 spaces are hospitals and schools. And for a small farm, that's really hard to